Welcome to Herf Zone Live. I'm here every Tuesday to bring you the best content weekly. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, search for Team Shirtless Mike, and follow on Facebook at Shirtless Mike. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Shirtless Mike 2020. See what goes on in my life, and hopefully I can see what goes on in yours. Herf Zone Live is expanding. Get your product in front of hundreds of viewers every single week. Let me advertise your cigar or product to my audience. DM me. Let's exchange information and get you a part of the Team Shirtless Mike team. Well, what is going on, everybody? I'm so sorry about last week. I scheduled a replay. It's kind of rough finding a guest for last week, but I figured out how to do a replay and everything. So, um, we got this next month booked out and everything is good. So, I hope everyone had a great day. I know I did. It's just been one of those days. So we have a great show lined up, for you guys tonight. So I'm just gonna let people filter in, get into the comments. If you're watching right now already, I see some numbers already hopping up. So make sure you leave a comment. And if you want it to show up on screen, you might want to go over to YouTube or the Shirtless Mike page, because on my personal page, for whatever reason, the comments don't show up. So yeah, it's just been a great day. We got a new sponsor being announced later on in the show tonight, Nomos Cigars. So I want to officially welcome them to the team. We'll do the ad in just a little bit, but it feels like I haven't been on forever. So yeah, but tonight we got the infamous Cigar-Coop. Not really infamous, but the notorious COOP is on the show tonight. Um, you're gonna hear him like you've never heard him before. You see him do interviews every week. Well, it's time for him to be on the other side of the table and get interviewed. So, without further ado, from the Hustler Universe Podcast Network Green Room, where you'll find a Cigar Hustlers podcast and the Chet and Palmer Shit Show. Welcome, Cigar-Coop, to Herf Zone Live.
Mike, what's up, brother? Thank you so much for having me. By the way, Notorious COOP, I really dig it. I'm
Instead of
really dig-
Notorious B.I.G., it's Notorious COOP.
that sound has a good ring to it, my friend.
I mean, you got really excited when I said that, so
I was
maybe
like, that is really good. Yeah, good job, Mike. Yeah.
yeah. So let me know how many people at PCA say that. I got to see what my reach.
We may have to work a little thing out with that. That's a good idea. We'll have to talk about that. I'll work something out of PCA. Yeah, with that.
Yeah, I'd be like, just don't even bring it up and just be like, just let me know if anybody reiterated that
Right,
for
right. Yeah, if you're going to PCA, yeah, reiterate it to me.
it.
We're gonna do a little. We'll do a little experiment there. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, man. So how was your day today, man?
Um, it was a pretty good day. I can't complain. Coming off, I've been on. Yeah, I went back. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, which is why I couldn't do the show.
Yeah.
And you're back into work right now, so But the difference is I work out of home now, so it's not like I have to drag myself into the office anymore. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. You were down here in Florida, man. Like,
I couldn't visit anyone in Florida. Everyone's like, "Well, I had my family, I had my mom down. It's the
yeah.
only time I had all four of my kids to yeah, so I really needed to spend time with them.
Oh,
I
most
just did,
definitely.
yeah.
Most definitely, yeah, because I understand. You weren't
Yeah.
too far from where I, but it's like nowadays it's so hard because I work so much. Like I dreamed for all these years and worked hard to get into the cigar industry full time. Now I am, and so now I just work all the time. So which I love. Um, but it's all good. So
Yeah, no, appreciate it, but appreciate your flexibility with the scheduling. I'm glad we were able to work it out.
oh, most definitely, man, no problem. So we're gonna get into this interview here. We got folks already watching and everything. So before we get into it, if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, wherever, go ahead and share that out because we gotta get the notorious COOP all the views that he can. So we'll start off with this here. So, Coop, you've been in the game for around 11 years now, but before you got into cigars professionally, you started off as being a consumer first, like all of us have. So, tell us about your first premium cigar you smoked, and what was it about cigars that caused you to fall in love and dive into cigar culture head first?
Yeah, it was kind of really an interesting experience because I was at the time living in the New York City area, and there was a guy on my sales team that we would kind of tag team on a lot of accounts, and he was a cigar smoker. and I would go to cigar lounges with him. I wasn't a smoker, and I would go and hang out, and I started kind of getting into the culture without smoking a cigar. Now, my first cigar was a disaster, right? I didn't know how to cut it. I didn't know how to light it. I didn't know how to puff it. Right. It was just, of course I lied and said I knew how to do it. Right. But it was a complete disaster. And it was a J&R. It was like one of those J&R originals. We happened to be in New Jersey at the JR Lounge,
Hmm.
and so it was a disaster. But about after a year, I was going to these lounges. I did say, you know what? I did start to light up, and it got a little more interesting. Lighting up and smoking there as opposed to just sitting there. And then when I moved to Charlotte in 2008, the the cigar scene's a little different in Charlotte. Like it's much more transactional in New York, I would say, as far as cigar lifestyle goes. You go and you buy your cigars. Occasionally, there's an event here and there, but Charlotte was much more focused around events. You got to meet a lot more of the personalities, and that kind of started driving my quest for knowledge, to learn more about these products, which is how I kind of got into what I'm doing now. So I credit a lot of the like retailers I met down in Charlotte who gave me some opportunities to access that I didn't maybe have before, to really kind of help start that out.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, you know, you start off as a consumer, and then you ended up going to a PCA. Like, this was like pre Cigar-Coop, and then we'll get into how you started Cigar-Coop. But like,
Yeah.
so what led you to the first PCA event? If it was, well, it probably wasn't PCA at the time. It was the other name. But like, tell us about how you went to your first one, and then take us to getting into starting Cigar-Coop.
Yeah, yeah, no, appreciate it. So, little the timeline. I moved to Charlotte in 2008, and this is when I just started really immersing myself into this stuff. And I mean, I was, type A personality, wanted to learn as much as possible. Didn't have any blog or media outlet at the time. But I really started to understand. I got to know one retailer guy. He's out of business now. His name's Tom Cacadelis. He ran a store called Outland Cigars. He kind of would occasionally lean on some of the members like myself with some business development advice. But given I understood a lot about like cigars, he started leaning on me for more of his operational things in terms of how he would run his business. He'd seek my input. That eventually led to, in 2010, to him inviting me to the trade show to kind of help him buy product. So I went to the show in 2010 as a buyer. And I went into that trade show. I tell everyone the story. You walk in. I don't know if have you been to an IPC/PCA?
Not yet. Like, I just barely, when I was still with Stogie Press, I was about to, and then you know came this close to getting canceled, and then COVID hit, and boom,
Yeah.
and
Mhm. Okay, so I'll kind of just tell you. So back then it was called IPCPR.
yeah,
Before that it was called RTDA. But when it
yep.
called IPCPR, you walk in, and I love seeing. I know I had this reaction. I love seeing other people's reaction. When you walk into this trade show, it's like the kid walking into Disney World for the first time. That picture an adult now walking. You walk into this trade show, and what do you see? You see these booths. It's like a city that's set up. Um, each of these little what do you call it? Booths are like have a mini lounge aspect to themselves. There's a lot of creativity, and of course, there's plenty of cigars. So I was just like wowed, but I don't know. It was some. I've been to trade shows in my day job before, but this one just somehow really wowed me because, again, you have the unique things about the cigar industry and the personal culture it has to it, and I was kind of compelled to write about it. I said, well, I want to document these visits to these booths, right? So I created, for lack of a better term, a blog. And I always tell people the writing was simply awful and the photography was crap, right? But somehow I was able to deliver this message out there. And I did a booth report about 21 booths, and that was apparently going to be really it. Um, and then I was surprised that what I learned is it's very easy to be a big fish in a small pond when it comes to the cigar industry. So in other words, you can get access to people a lot quicker than you think. combine that with meeting people at the trade show, I discovered people were actually paying attention to what I was doing. Right, I
Mm.
was completely shocked with this
The light
terrible
bulb
writing,
went off.
terrible for that. I said they might, yeah, and they said, "Hey, well, how about you review some cigars, right?" And I'm like, well, okay, right. I don't think anyone's gonna read it, right? But then I started reviewing cigars, and one thing led to another, and that led to the annual Cigar-Coop countdown. And I think once that's the end of the year list, and once that kind of happened, things kind of just took off, and it became an evolutionary process in terms of honing what Cigar-Coop was all about after that.
Yeah, and when this was just the blog, did you always call it Cigar Coop, or did you have a different name for it initially before you kind of evolved that into Cigar Coop?
It always was Cigar-Coop, but if I was starting today, it would not be Cigar-Coop. For a lot of reasons. Because one is I have a team now, and two, just all the problems that it causes with various media platforms. The actual name of Cigar Coop came because I had this porch in my house, and there were birds kind of resting in there, almost like a chicken coop. Right? So that's and I'd smoke out there sometimes, and that's how I actually got the name Cigar Coop.
Hmm.
But once Cigar Coop took off, it was like, and no one wanted me to change the name at that point, so I didn't change the name.
Yeah, I mean that's how once you get a branding of some sort, your last name is Cooper, so it's like, hey, Cigar Coop, But
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool to learn that history that
yeah,
it was basically like by a chicken coop, and
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah, yeah.
Now, what made you decide to make your slogan rumor free, teaser free?
This is where I'm gonna get in a little trouble, but I'll say it. So you go back to 2010, 2011. There was a lot of like I'm doing these reviews, right? And there was a lot of bad information out there, incorrect information. Um, and it was being reported by various media sites. There was another guy who's by the name of Gary Arts. I know a lot of people liked him in the cigar industry, but he tended to be this curmudgeon who would speak his mind a little too much sometimes. And I think he actually hurt us in cigar media in the long run, right? Because people didn't really take us seriously. So there was so much wrong information going out there that I said, you know what? That's why I'm saying we're not going to. When I started getting into the news piece, I said no rumors. I said because people were reporting like the craziest stuff, and it just wasn't true. Um, I'm not a fan of teaser marketing. I'll be completely honest with you. And why I'm not a fan of it is I don't think it belongs in a journalistic. If you're trying to do journalism, I don't think it fits in. If you're trying to do a marketing campaign, I get it.
Hmm.
But you try to fit teasers into journalism, it makes for crappy content. Like, well, who cares that someone's thinking about using a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper on the next release? No one's going to read that, right? They're going to read what that release is, right?
Yeah.
So I've stuck with the rumor free, teaser free approach probably since 2011. And again, it kind of caught on. I didn't expect it to catch on. Um, it's funny because I think for some reason Barry Stein thinks I did that against him. I don't know why he said that, right? And it's not true at all, right? And this is when
Yeah.
Barry was before he was at Miami Cigar was at had his thing. Because I don't think Barry was one of the guys doing it, but for some reason he thinks I'm the guy who did it against him. But um, I like Barry said there's no problem there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, as you got into Cigar Coop, then eventually, what was this? I'm trying to remember the year. I didn't even write down the year. Terrible research, but I did the research. So prior to your own podcast shows that you do, um, you were, you got into, you were with Stogie Geeks and everything. Like, how'd you get hooked up with that situation? How long were you a part of that? And how do you felt like it prepared you for the current lineup of shows that you do currently, that you're currently involved with?
Yeah, just like kind of you and a lot of us, right? We are also maybe what we do. We also consume what other people do. I watch your show, you watch my show, we watch other shows. And we kind of developed some connections. It just so happened that Stogie Geeks they had launched their podcast literally out of a garage in 2011, and they were referencing a lot of my content. And I was kind of, and they kind of were buying into the whole, hey, his stuff is is pretty much vetted out there, so they were respecting that. Um, I met one of the guys at Stogie Geeks. His name, his nickname was Stogie Santa. Um, Me and him are best friends to this day. I mean, we're very tight. We talk several times a week on the phone, even though he's not with Stogie Geeks anymore either. But we met, we had this connection, and Stogie Santa went back to a guy by the name of Paul Asadorian, who was running Stogie Geeks, and they were looking for another host, and they asked me to come on board. Um, when we kind of joined forces, we soon realized we had things we could start sharing expenses on, namely infrastructure, you know, invoicing, web servers, all that fun stuff. Plus, they had a studio we can use, right? So it was kind of a win-win scenario. So Stogie Geeks and Cigar-Coop were partners for about 3 years, and I could tell you something. I don't regret. It was the best. It was like a college education because Paul, who ran that, is a true professional podcaster. He taught me a lot. A lot, not just the technical stuff, but the delivery stuff. And he is a very good podcaster in the internet security field. So I look at that as it was a very positive experience with Stogie Geeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's where I first officially, saw you. Maybe even after the fact. And of course, when I got, with Boston Jimmy and Stogie Press, you're basically doing the same type of stuff we were doing. So just, you were like, same level as us. So we would, constantly, reference and, you know, and all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
and that's what's really good about it. And then, even though you may say the same, but I think you'd agree there were different ways we deliver it, right? Maybe emphasis, like Jimmy, I think, and you guys did a really good job with lounges, right? And that's something I'm really crappy with, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that everyone brought their little thing, but you learn from everyone. And it gives everyone a different perspective, which is nice.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of I got some more questions and continue on it, but I just thought of something. So,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
um, like back in the day, in the early days, of YouTube, of course, there was Brian Glenn and everything. But because you would probably know this question, but did you ever watch Doc Diaz, Stogie Fresh,
Oh, that
and
guy,
follow it?
yes.
Yeah,
The guy's my hero. That guy's another guy who taught me a lot. He was just a pure educator when it came to cigars. Right, and he had
yeah,
and Sunday nights I'd sit where I am now, and I'd listen to the replay of the Doc Stogie Fresh podcast. Um, and I actually went to Nicaragua with him once, and he's such a nice guy. I miss him. He got out of everything completely. Like he's
yeah.
disappeared.
I was wondering about that, like
Yeah,
because when I've been smoking cigars for like 15 years, and I didn't really listen to the podcast, but I watched a lot of his videos and stuff,
yeah.
and I mean, he was like that guy, and then
He,
I don't
he,
know, he's hopefully
yeah,
he's
I mean,
okay.
yeah, that's what I hope too. Like I said, he brought a pure, like, almost like a college professor approach to his content. So
Yeah,
you learned a lot from him, which was really good. And he had opinions, and I liked something when he took a stand on something. I liked when he did that as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
That the very first time I ever heard the term retro hailing was from
Doc.
Doc
Yeah,
Diaz. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, most definitely. Well, I'm gonna take a quick break to shout out my new sponsor. Let me pull this up
absolutely.
here, and then we got some more to come into. So I'm just gonna pull this up here, cover us both. So Herf Zone Live is sponsored by. Oh, I gotta get to the right thing. Hearthstone Live is sponsored by Nomos Cigars, rated 91 in Cigars and Spirits magazine. Nomos is a full-bodied 6x56 cigar that features a rich, full flavor accomplished with our high-quality construction and exclusive aging process. Once the fine cigar is born, it immediately begins our exclusive Nomos Aging Process nap. While each cigar naps, it continues to develop its unique aroma and flavor that sets itself apart from any other cigar the world over. It is a delicious medium smoke resulting from the finely aged Cameroon wrapper and blend of 8-year-old seco Dominican filler and 5-year-old Nicaragua criollo filler. The Indonesian The Indonesian Sumatra binder finishes the cigar ingredients with the finest quality tobacco available. This exclusive blend provides a beautiful smoke right down to the last nub. Check out nomoscigars.com for info on where to find retailers that carry Nomos cigars. Orders also available on their website. Also follow them on Instagram at Nomos Cigars. Awesome. So
Hey,
shouts out to them.
yeah,
But
Mike, can I give Corey a shout out too?
yeah, you can
From
give whoever
Nomo.
you want a shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. So Corey last month in April reached out to me, right? And his email, unfortunately, I have like the worst spam filters. It captures too much stuff, right? His email went to spam. Um, he was kind enough to reach out to me a second time, and this time I actually caught the email in spam. So we just connected like the last few days, and I'm looking forward. He seems like such a nice guy, and I'm really looking forward to kind of connecting with him more
Oh yeah.
on his brand. Yeah. So
Yeah,
shout out to Corey.
I think I told him to reach out. I don't know if he was planning on doing it prior, but we were talking. I was like, "Yeah, you got to reach out to Cigar-Coop, all
Yeah,
that."
I felt horrible that it got missed, and I'm glad he took the approach to email me again. So thank you, Corey, and like I said, look forward to connecting with you. I think he's gonna be at the trade show too.
Oh
I
yeah,
saw.
definitely. Yeah, definitely he will. Yeah, him and Gerald, they're going. I mean, they're
Good job.
busy. They're always in the Dominican Republic
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah,
It was a pretty good show. Next
yeah.
time I have him on the show, I'm gonna have both of them together. So that'll be cool. So
Nice.
Since 2017. Okay, I did put the year. So after you left Stogie Geek, you started your own podcast, Primetime Special Edition, and Primetime Jukebox. I've always wanted to ask why all these shows, and how do you have enough time in the day to produce so many shows? Which I love them, but that's a lot of shows.
Yeah, it's too much. So a little about prime time. So when I left Stogie Geeks, we actually split the business at the end of 2016. Um, it was a very amicable split. I mean, business wise, but we were differing a lot on not just business but also the content of the show. I think Stogie Geeks is more of always been the approach of four guys in a lounge smoking together. But I think what happened is as our news piece on Cigar Coop really began to evolve, I had to somehow come up with a show I think that supported that, and to try to change Stogie Geeks probably was a little, an unfair thing on my part to do. I did try to change it, right, and it kind of led to a little friction, but nonetheless, when we split things, um, I started Primetime with the idea of a show for the cigar industry, that industry people would want to tune into for industry talk. So it's very much an industry show. It was modeled after sports radio. So if you listen to like Mike and Mike on ESPN or Mike and the Mad Dog, who used to be up in New York, that's what this was. The approach was meant to be a more hard hitting show, more serious show, and it took off. I mean, it took off right away, and we just celebrated 5 years with that show. And that's the primetime show. It's every Thursday. Now, primetime special edition, that's a what I call the news magazine show. We do that twice a month. And that's meant to have longer types of conversations or longer types of theme, kind of in the mode of 2020 or 60 minutes, but not really investigative, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
And that's hosted like Aaron Loomis hosts the primetime show with me. Barry Duplessis hosts primetime special edition. So that's really how that second show came about. And then what happened is during the pandemic, everyone wanted to be on a show, right? So I had
Yeah.
two slots. I prime times every week, special editions twice a month, and we were packed with those, right?
Hmm.
So that's why there's two shows. Jukebox is a completely different project. There was a podcast out there for 5 or 6 years called Cigar Jukebox, hosted by a guy named Dave Burke out of Australia.
Hmm.
It was mostly music, but it had cigars and kind of doing cigar themes with music. Dave, after about 200 episodes, was ready to just get out of it. Not so much that he didn't like doing the show, but it was a lot of work to book guests and manage the infrastructure. So I had known Dave, and I said, "Hey, Dave, what if we move this show into the Cigar-Coop infrastructure? You'll get all the benefits of our web hosting, the advertisers. we we will book the guests for you. We'll put out the announcements, and we'll post the shows afterwards. And Dave really bought into it, right? So that's how Jukebox came. My goal with Jukebox is still to keep it more music than cigars.
Yeah.
And we've seen in the last 12 months a big growth. Jukebox was a much more ambitious project. We didn't have quite the numbers out of the gate that we did with the other two shows, because I think we were marketing music to the cigar industry. But the last 12 months, we've seen a big growth with Jukebox. Some of our biggest shows have now been the Jukebox shows. So that's how that came about. And I don't, and that's we do that about 2 Mondays a month. That show, and we pre-record that show as opposed to do it live.
Oh yeah, yeah. And like, what do you like to do better, like a live show or a pre-recorded show? Because obviously you can sit there and edit it, but when you're live, I mean, I know you go back and edit it and post it on YouTube and
Yeah.
everything, but like, what's your favorite type of show to do?
So I like a live show, right? But I'm much more in favor of the delivery mechanism to be a podcast catcher than YouTube and Facebook. So I like the idea of having subscribers. They can get the subscriptions when they can. They can listen to audio of the show as well as video of the show. So I prefer that, but I like doing that initial thing live. There's a lot more energy with it live than recorded. Jukebox we have to record because Dave's in Australia.
Yeah,
That's the reason why we have to do that one, right? But
yeah,
but I tell you, we've had some epic nights. With live shows, and you can sometimes, even as much as I love the podcast platform, you can't duplicate it when it's not live, because
yeah.
people are chatting and interacting and stuff like that. It's like it brings an energy to it.
Oh yeah. Sometimes like especially like probably my favorite show that you've done was the most recent Jonathan Drew interview when he was like really close to the camera. He was like, "Hey yo," and then like everybody was talking about that. Like,
He is. I tell you what. We were talking about challenging interviews. I would put him as probably one of the most challenging interviews, and not because he's a pain in the neck or anything. It's the opposite. He is so on top of stuff, and sometimes he's a step ahead of you. But what an amazing! I mean, that was an amazing night with that show. He gave us 3 hours, which was unheard of, right? And yeah, that was the energy that night was hard to beat. Yeah.
yeah. Now, when I saw that show, like I heard a bunch of stories that he told and everything, and there was this guy who came into our shop like months ago. His name is Dave Donato. He and he was like back, he was telling us, he was like saying that back in the day, when JD was first starting the acid line and everything, and he was going back and forth to Nicaragua with JD and everything. And I was talking about some of the stories that I heard and everything lined up. And but this guy, he owns like a car dealership, like in our area, but he lives in like New Smyrna, which is probably like an hour and a half drive or whatever. And he comes in and buys cigars from us. And I mean, that's like cigar industry history right there. Just like most of that interview and all that interview, and it's awesome. So
Yeah. No, when you get something like that and you get that like I said, you're hearing Jonathan's story. It's Yeah, it's special. Jonathan's a guy I'd love to be his biographer someday. I mean, I would honestly, I would do it and make very little money to do it because I'd love to bio that guy because I think his story needs to be told from cover to end.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
and
it's very
I think it's a positive story too.
Oh yeah, it is very hip hop influenced. Like it literally, like that's like the majority of the cigar industry. Most of these, big guys, like the Fuente family, the Padrones, Perdomos, they all started from the bottom and just worked their way up. And so that's always encouraging for me, as somebody who did a show. I literally started at the bottom. If you go back and watch my first show and how terrible the quality was, like, and then as opposed to now, and just stuff like that just encourages me.
Yeah, you've done like I told you before. You've done in 2 years an amazing job, Mike. I mean, really good job. And 2 years, a lot of people are gone after like 2 months. So good
Yeah,
job.
I mean,
Yeah.
I only wish I knew what I was doing. This is pure. This is
Oh,
pure.
you're good. You're doing a great job. You're doing a
This is
great job.
pure. This is pure winging it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, and on top of all your other shows, you and Matthew Tobacco, you guys got your show that you do. It's not as often. I forget how, because I don't catch it when it's live. Generally, I always watch it after the fact, so I forget how often you do it. But you do the spare notes. Like, do you really have that much different, uh, extra notes to discuss to create, a whole other show, or do you just create other topics? Um, Tell us
Um.
about that.
Yeah. Most that's Matt's show. So that's part of the Smoking Tobacco Network, and I'm on it. I
Yeah.
guess I'm listed as special guest host, but I do most of them. Um. A lot of overlap, but what it gives us an ability to do is to have the conversation with a different person, and kind of get their perspectives and talk about their perspectives too. Occasionally, we will pull some topics out of left field that we haven't discussed on the other shows as well. So the idea is with that is kind of give you a little of the inner workings of both shows, a little sometimes a little drama, give some thoughts on this. Like we will rant, we'll praise. So we do that twice a month. So it's a lot of fun to do that with Matt. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah, he's a dude that I've seen, come up as well. I finally got to meet him down at the Great Smoke, and spent some time talking, and he's a good guy. Like
Yeah,
talking,
yeah,
he's been doing it about the same
yeah,
amount of time as me, and so it's kind of like we're colleagues in this,
yeah,
So I got to see him come, from all of a sudden I was like, who is this Matthew Tobacco guy? There, oh, it's Matthew Tobacco. How
yeah.
you doing? Now, out of all the shows that you've done, you kind of answer this question, but you might have a different one. But who has been your most challenging interview so far?
The most challenging interview was George Padron with Stogie Geeks, and I interviewed him twice. He is a tough interview, and if he doesn't like the question, he's gonna let you know it in the middle of the interview, and he will. So he'll take control of that interview very quickly if he doesn't think it's going his way. But and I've had in both interviews I had with him, there was a little bit of an incident in both cases, but he came back and did the second interview as well. So, and he was incredibly nice afterwards. He doesn't hold a grudge or anything, but he will challenge you. And believe me, he's not afraid to challenge you. And he's not
Yeah,
afraid to call you wrong or anything like that. But I like that. I like that in him. I like the fact he challenged me. I remember one of the things he challenged me on was the fact that I said something along the lines that, well, Padron's, core competency really isn't round cigars. That set him off. Okay. And I understand why I set him off afterwards, right? Because it did, right? So, but most of that stuff was box press. That's what led me to say that comment. So,
yeah.
yeah, that was, but yeah, he'll challenge. He's definitely the most challenging interview by far.
Now, who's been your favorite interview so far?
They're all like my children, but there's, I think the one is if you go back to episode 37 of Primetime, we had on Charlie Tarano and Jack Tarano, and I went to Boca to do that interview, and Charlie really had never told the story on the air at all about what led to him to sell Tarano and the aftermath of that. And I can just tell you it was magical because a lot of the Tarano reps and employees were tuned in that night or tuned in later on, and they said we never knew this, right? They didn't know any of this stuff that was going on, right? And it was just like an eye-opening show um, for that. So that was a very special show, one of my favorites. The other one was a recent show we did. It was Primetime episode 211, and we had on three retailers. We had on Dave Garofalo, Abe DeBabna, and Jeff Borshowitz. I was really resistant to put retailers on the show because most of them have not made good guests. So I was worried about putting these three on, even though I knew they could be good guests in their own right.
Yeah,
And I tell you, that was another magical night. I mean, it was just amazing. And these guys all bring something besides being a retailer to the table. They're all great guys. And I came out of that saying, people might want to hear retail. I might have read that one wrong. People might want to hear retail talk after all. So I guess
yeah.
we're an industry show. We need to focus a little more on that. So we're getting a little better with that right now.
Yeah, I really liked that show that you did with those because those are power players in the in the industry. And
They are, and they all have different brands as well. Jeff's got the farm, and Dave has United, and Abe's got he's actually involved with Syndicato, and he's got KMA. So yeah, it's a lot with that.
yeah, most definitely. Now, how did you get involved initially with KMA? Like, and how long about? Because I know they've been doing it for like 10 plus years.
Yeah, so they used to. This is kind of a funny story. They they used to basically do news. They've always done news on their show, right? But for a long time, they were basically taking the news from Cigar Aficionado, Coop, and Half Wheel, and they would just regurgitate it, right? So someone came up with the idea one day. Says, "Hey, why don't we just do? Why are we doing this work every week? Why don't we just bring the person on to do the work, right?" So who do they select? They select Charlie Minato, of course, right? And I like Charlie, right? I like Charlie. So this is not a bash on Charlie, right? They didn't even give me. So I was pissed. I'm like, I know Abe for a long time. Like, Abe, could you at least let me do a presentation to you and tell you like this is what my vision is of this and how I would do it. And they felt bad, right? And it was they said wasn't really thought through. No hard feelings, right? I said, man, they'll be back in 6. I don't see this working, right, with Charlie. And say, uh, and about 8 months later, they called me and they said, "Hey, the thing with Charlie's not working out. You still interested?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" I said, "Here's what I'm thinking." So that's how that came about, and that's I'm at 5.5 years with them already doing
Yeah, so
that.
you've been doing about half the time that they've been on, so that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and again, I learned a lot from those guys as well. They've been really accommodating in terms of my schedule. They've given me total control of the content. Which I can't ask for more. They're great partners to have.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's go on to the next thing here. So I don't know if you saw this, but recently, Casey, he made some comments about different cigar shows out there. He didn't mention any names or nothing like that. So we're not gonna do the drama, which I don't do, but he's talking about how cigar media has become oversaturated, no doing homework, same boring people, etc. Everyone's doing every show has the same guest, etc. So do you feel there's a lot of fly by night cigar shows just putting out mediocre content, or do you feel like the majority of the shows out there are like us, that we put a lot of time and effort into the research, making connections in order to make every single show different and interesting?
I like Casey a lot. He's a good guy. He's always been good to me. He's an opinionated guy, and he likes to get attention.
So
Okay.
that's why I like him.
All right, but Casey likes his attention. Let's be real about that. Okay. He's not wrong in what he's saying. Okay. He's not wrong, but I think in general, if the shows that have been around for a while, right? I'm talking, let's say 2 years, right? They're not regurgitating the content, right? Are they putting the same guests on? Yeah, but it's no different than you go to like when someone writes a book, right? They're on
Hmm.
ABC, CNN, like they're doing the book tour. They're all going and doing it. No one complains about that though, right? So,
Yeah,
but for some reason, it's a problem with the cigar thing. Here's the thing, Casey. You gotta call a name out then. Call a name out, right? And here's the other thing I'm gonna say to cigar media. Don't assume it's you because then you make don't make oh it's not me, I do this. No, just ignore him, and unless he's going to call you out, assume it's not you because you don't want to
yeah,
be like because what you did he did that's exactly what he wanted everyone to do. He wanted everyone to say, oh, it wasn't me, and it's like I'm doing this. Like, no, just let your content stand on your own. But he needed to call a name out. But here's the thing, he's not wrong because I've seen some pretty bad content out there is what I'm
yeah,
saying. But
yeah.
most of that stuff doesn't last. Yeah,
Yeah,
guests
that's
have to
the
be.
good thing.
Yeah, guests should be a little more careful when you book a show. Like the show, like know a little about the show you're doing. Right? Like don't just do a show for the sake of doing a show.
Most definitely. And see, I'm blessed to the point now. I've been doing a long, like I gauge this for whenever I go to like major cigar events or like the Great Smoke, and who all comes up to me and like I get surprised on who knows who I am. Like sometimes, like even when I go to a different cigar lounge, like I'm out there. So most people know what my show is. So when I approach them, like, oh yeah, I'm happy about that. Like very few people don't know who I am now. So it's pretty cool that those of us like me and you, a couple other great shows, we got that good reach. So
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I remember we were at the Great Smoke Dinner. I remember we were at the Red Meat Loves Club, and you kind of came up to me, and you had this vision, right? And you had a specific vision for what you wanted to do. It's evolved since then, right? But I
hmm
still think you started somewhere and eventually it evolves to something else. So I think you were. I mean, a guy like you were thinking about this a lot, and I can tell you were thinking about this a lot of what you're doing. I can tell tonight you put a lot of time into this. So, um, you know, but there's guys out there. I'm telling you, I do see it. Casey's not wrong on that, but he's got to call the names out.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, and see, in those situations when names are called out, I just like I don't even put comments. I
I
just
gotta
kind
go.
of watch. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
watch so I can know how to move.
Yeah, Casey and Skip will do both. Casey and Skip will love. They'll try to bait you into that, and that's what they do, and they do it well. Don't
Very
take the bait.
well.
I tell people just don't take the bait. Let them call you out. That's the way to do it.
Most definitely. Now, since the time that you've been doing what you do and everything, like how have you seen like the evolution of cigar media? You were saying that, at first they're kind of seen as like a joke in a way, but since you and a few others came on the scene, like how have you seen that evolution of cigar media change for the better, and where do you kind of see it going in the future?
Yeah, what one pattern I saw over time is that people realize they get into it, and then they're passionate about cigars, but when it comes to the work, putting the work in on media, they realize it's a lot of work and they get out of it. So we saw a lot of that. I the one thing I've seen is there's this push towards video content, and I'm not talking. So I think, for example, the shirtless Mike brand, right? Would you say the shirtless Mike brand is the podcast is the central piece, right?
Yep.
And that's fine, right? So I'm not knocking video content, but people have gotten away from the written content, right?
Yeah.
So what's happened is you go to a trade show. Like, okay, so I wasn't at TPE this year. Here's a good example. I wasn't at TPE this year. I had a really good reason why I couldn't be there. And I was looking for coverage of this show. And the coverage was simply awful, right? Because I I got there was not a lot of written content, and all Halffield was talking about was wrapper binder filler, right? And then it was all these videos that really had not a lot to say other than maybe what Casey said, the same stuff, right? Show's going great. I love TPE. I'll be back next year. So I came in, I'm like, there was a lot more to happen to TPE, and I don't think it was talked. I don't think it was discussed. And kind of where I go back to that, as I think the written piece of cigar media is really getting lost. It should not be dropped. And it maybe if what I'd like to see the video piece do is capture a little more of the essence of these trade shows, the vibe of these trade shows, which I think they're lacking right now. And so, like I said, I'm okay if people don't want to write about it, but if you're going to go to the video piece, just stop trying to get in front of a camera with a personality and try to kind of get the vibe of what's going on there. I don't know if that
Y-
made sense, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it made perfect
Yeah.
sense. So last week, you and all the other cigar media outlets, you published a story about the U.S. District Court hearing the oral arguments about nullifying the FDA deeming rule on premium cigars. We all know that this isn't over, but where do you see this eventually leading to, based on the patterns of what's been going on with dealing with the FDA?
Okay. So let me just explain what this is first, and then I'll tell you why I'm going to give the answer right there. So there's two things. There's what's called a preliminary injunction and a permanent injunction. So we went through the preliminary injunction phase for the past few years where we've had this court case coming, but the cigar industry wanted a preliminary injunction to basically stop everything until the court case was heard. And that failed.
Yeah.
Okay. That failed. I mean, it was the court case. The injunction really wasn't, for the most part, most of those injunctions weren't granted. There was some things overturned, like with the warning labels and with some of these substantial equivalents, right? Permanent injunctions now going back saying throw out these regulations completely, right? And so there were oral arguments that were heard on Monday. And look, I'm going to give the trade association some credit. They published some very good detail on the oral arguments. But they all looked at it glass half full. Like, yeah, they said this. This is really good for us, right? Um, but in reality, this is going to be a very tough case to win, right? I don't. While this judge has been sympathetic towards the cigar industry, he has not shown any inclination to say that these regulations should be thrown out, and that's where I'm kind of going. So I think it's a long shot. The other thing I'll say is, like, if you wanted to really see a good breakdown of the proceedings, I'll give Charlie credit. He put a whole article summarizing the details of that. So good job by him on that. We just covered some of the highlights of what this meant on our story. Because like I said, Charlie did a very good job with the details there. Long
Awesome.
shot. So it's a long shot, unfortunately. I think we're not gonna win, but I think we have to go through this anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like a never-ending
Yeah.
process. There's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
much going on. Like
Yep.
it's unreal. So
Yep.
you are going to PCA this year. You've already said that. So what do you think about what do you think the trade show floor mood will be compared to last year? Business as usual, or
I think there'll be more positive momentum going into the trade show this year. Um, when the trade show opens, because there's going to be some more faces there this year compared to last year, whether it's exhibitors and whether it's retailers. So I think when you go into the trade show with a good vibe, it usually means a good trade show. If you go into a trade show with negative energy, it makes for a bad trade show. So if you remember Cigar-Con, that was a
mm-hmm.
complete bungle by the PCA, right?
Yeah,
And look, and I got in a lot of trouble for that, right? But that was a bungle, and it killed the mood of the whole trade show. Last year, it was the opposite. Everyone was glad to be back there, and then unfortunately, the trade show finished on a bad note with that whole relevant photo that was taken. But we got over that, right? So, look, I hope this year we don't have any distractions, but I think it's going to be positive this year. But I'm always worried about days 3 and 4 with the trade show if the attendance or I should say foot traffic dips on days 3 and 4. You're going to start seeing people all over again complaining about it.
yeah.
I'll also say this: people need to stop beating up the PC. Look, PCA is not perfect, right? I'll tell you some things. I can tell you something that they're not perfect on right now, but let me tell you, they're doing a good job. Are they doing a perfect job? No, but they're doing a good job. And I'll say this: we've never in cigar media been treated better than we have been under this regime of the PCA. So we should. If people want to complain, I'll send them back at a time machine 10 years ago to the old IPCPR regime.
Oh yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely. I've heard a lot of the old stories. I've followed a lot of it. One day I'll get to a trade show now that I'm in the industry full time. But until then, I just follow and try to follow along and
Yeah. So
stay up to date.
what is attendance going to be? I have no idea. I have no idea what the
I
attendance.
haven't heard much. I mean, I haven't heard too much. I haven't heard too much negativity as of yet. Like a couple of years ago, when there was some negativity, and then prior to COVID and all that, there was some negative. I haven't heard any as of yet, but
Yeah, but there's people out there that are just the PCA. If they just take a deep breath, they'll complain about it, right? So I mean, I heard one person complaining, "Well, the trade show floor is only X% full." I'm like, "Yeah, the big four is not there." And well, that doesn't matter. So well, they still have to take the same trade show space. I mean, it's you can't pick on them. If they can get the big four back, they will. But in terms of, I think most of the main players, I think the only big player who's not coming back, not coming this year is AJ Fernandez. It looks like,
oh wow,
and I haven't got an official word on that, but he's not listed on the company list.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
because he's normally there, isn't he?
they're normally there. So, but I don't. LaFleur took a year off last year because of for business reasons. It didn't make sense for them. That may be the case. I don't think there's a problem, but I think
Yeah,
it's also some companies are now looking at this saying this might not be the year to spend 5 to 6 figures on a booth. You have to look at this as a business, and it may not make sense if they don't have a lot of releases or things like that. So
yeah, most definitely.
yeah,
And the last topic, and we'll get into fun questions after this. So, who do you think retailers attending this show should be looking out for this year? Are there any new releases that we should have our eyes on more than others?
You know, I would keep an eye on United Cigars. They have a lot of interesting releases that are coming out. We've been starting to report on them. So they have the Atabey Byron Bandolero, that premium stuff on the selected tobacco.
Hmm.
There's a new brand coming out of there called Alfonso. There's several other lines under the United portfolio making a debut. I think they're coming out with. They have a $5 cigar, which in this economy is really good to have, and they have a
Yeah,
$25 cigar. So I think there's something for everybody with this right now. So United's the one company, unless someone kind of comes from left field. We don't know what Saka's doing yet. We don't know what Malillo's doing yet. So those are going to be some big question marks right now. Uh, we never know what Fuente's doing.
yeah,
Uh, Rocky, it's a crapshoot if the people are wowed. Like last year, people were really wowed by the releases. So, but other years that hasn't happened. So my father's already announced their stuff. It's not. It's good stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I would say United is the leader out of the gate, but there's still others that can catch them.
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know if you saw the picture with Nick Malillo and AJ Fernandez, and I might have missed it. I don't know if he's talked about it or whatever. Do you think there's going to be a collaboration with them?
there already is.
Oh, there is. Okay,
Yeah, so the Tabernacle lines come out of AJ,
okay,
and so does Charter Oak. So there already is. Now, could there be something a little more branded with that? Now that's always a good question, Mikey.
yeah, that's kind of what I was like
Yeah,
referring to because
yeah. Those are
I was
Nick
like,
releases made at the factory, so that they
yeah,
co-brand. Um, that's an interesting. It would have to be under Foundation this year, I would say. Do they co-brand?
yeah.
I could see it. Yeah.
All right, so now we're gonna get into the fun questions here, and then after this, we'll end the show because I keep my show around an hour ish. So let's see. I got the good questions right in front of me here.
Uh
So
huh.
I guess I'll start with which word would you use if you could only use one for the rest of your life?
Fabulous.
Fabulous. And why is that?
I kind of like the whole fabuloso, or just it's just kind of a gregarious type of word that has a positive spin on it.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And what's your most embarrassing moment in grade school?
Oh man, some girl tied my shoes together. Some girl, and I couldn't get the knot out.
Now, how
Oh,
did this happen? Were you just sitting there and then
oh, it
she
was
snuck
it
up
was
on
like
you?
we were in the bleachers at like the school gym when it happened. Oh, I mean, it was bad. I was embarrassed. I had to like, call for help.
Oh man.
That was bad. Yeah, some girl, Dara was her name. Oh, oh, if I ever find her. Nah, just kidding.
What's the weirdest thing you have ever eaten?
The weirdest thing I've ever eaten: crickets.
I've heard other people say that. Like, how do the crickets taste?
They taste crunchy. They're nothing. They don't taste bad. They don't have a great flavor to them. I mean, these had some chocolate thrown on them too, so it made it a little more palatable.
Interesting. Chocolate
Yeah,
covered crickets.
yeah.
What is something that's true that nobody agrees with you on?
Something that's true that nobody agrees with me on. Um, do I have to think it's true, or it's actually? Is this more?
Just say what's something that's true that nobody agrees with you on. That's how the questions are. I didn't write the question. I just come up with random.
Okay. Top Gun was not a good movie. I see
You talk about the
people
original or the new one?
the original because I wouldn't go see the new one. It
Ah,
was not a good movie. It was an average movie. It was not a great, like, people make it out to be this great movie. It's not.
I'll have to watch it. I've never even seen it, and then
You're not missing much. You're not missing much on it. Yeah,
everyone's talking about the new one, like, oh, that's the greatest movie of this
yeah,
time. That's because hardly any good movies are really coming out, so that's what they're comparing it to.
yeah, yeah.
Sweet. And what are those things that you're too old to do but you still enjoy?
Oh, I still like, for example, a kitty breakfast cereal. Fruit Loops, something that's a really kids type of thing. Um, I'll still watch Mister Rogers if I flip in channels, right? Even though he's dead and that's a
Oh,
kid show.
I like Mr. Rogers.
I
He's
like Mister. I like Mister Rogers. Yeah, I don't get old of that at all. I still watch the Christmas cartoons. Um, so I'll definitely like that. I mean, I can say I watch the Flintstones, but that's kind of a little more of an adult cartoon in a lot of ways. So a lot of
yeah,
adults watch that. But yeah, I would say those things.
sweet. Yeah, you got Matt down in the comments saying Top Gun is a classic.
Okay, he's wrong. It's an average movie. It's not a dog rocket of a movie. I can name. There were movies that came out in the '80s that are better. Before I don't. I never heard anyone say Top Gun was a top. Except one guy I do know say it, right. So if you said top 10 movies of the '80s, there is no way that people had Top Gun on that list until they announced there was a sequel. It was a forgettable movie. It wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't a great movie.
Yeah. All right, so Matt, you can stop in the comments now. So there was only two comments, but let's see, a couple more here. So uh,
I can't
what are
even look at you.
what are your pet peeves?
Talking behind someone's back and disloyalty.
That's why I got loyalty tattooed on my neck.
There you go.
If I'm gonna talk shit, I'm gonna talk
Yeah,
shit to somebody's
and I'll
face.
find and I'm gonna find out if you're talking about me. Like there's one guy who knows. I've heard him talk shit about me in a cigar lounge that I go to, right? And then I find out about it. And he's just completely like, you think I'm not gonna find out about it? So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Let's see, a few more here. I'm trying to get the. I got like over 400 questions in front of me. I
it's
just
all good,
Googled.
all good, yeah, all good.
So, what would you be if you had to wear one Halloween costume every day for the rest of your life?
What would I be if I would have to wear one Halloween costume for the rest of my life?
Yeah, every day.
I had a Howard Stern costume. It was pretty good, right? I could be Howard
Was that
Stern every.
Howard Stern or Fart Man Howard Stern?
No, it was regular Howard Stern with the leather jacket and the long hair. So I do that one. I would definitely love to be uh a Wolfman, like as well. Have the beard, just walk around like the Wolfman. That one's a pretty cool one if I'm going with a classic Halloween costume.
Nice. And what is the first thing you do after getting home from a trip?
Uh, Watch TV. I'm notorious, right, for not unpacking. My wife hates it. So when we got back, I still have stuff from Florida I haven't unpacked yet. I'm like notorious. Typically when I either have a long flight or a long drive, first thing I want to do is unwind on my sofa. I don't want to unpack.
That's why you're the notorious
So,
COOP.
yeah, exactly.
Now you're gonna need theme music to go with that.
I like it. I like it.
What are the songs that make you sing along whenever you hear it?
West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys.
Okay.
Yeah, that would definitely be one. Um, Pretty Vegas by In Excess is definitely another one. Um, Out on the Street by Bruce Springsteen.
Heck yeah.
Yep, that one. I could definitely just start blurting out.
All right, I'm gonna do two more questions here, so I'm trying to make them good here. What is the worst TV advertisement you've seen recently?
Oh, the worst TV. There's a lot of bad ones. Uh, there was one ad that was someone imitating Bruce Springsteen singing "Dancing in the Dark." I forget what it is. These new Dr. Pepper ads are awful. I don't know the guy they have doing those Dr. Pepper ads. Horrible, horrible. He's got to go. Those are definitely the two.
All right. And the last one here. If you have $1 million, what are things you wouldn't spend it on?
I wouldn't spend it on vacations. Uh,
Vacation.
Vacations, you go through that real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you got to be very, very careful with that. I wouldn't invest it all in the stock market the same day either. But yeah, vacations. I get the whole thing of family memories and all, but you want to be careful with that. You could go through money real fast with a vacation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Well, that leads to the end of the show. I appreciate you for coming on tonight, bro.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, this was fun. Had a ball. Do it again. Yeah, this is great. Hopefully we'll connect sometime soon. My next trip I'm in Florida. Or if not, maybe a TP early next year.
Yep. Or I'm always at the Great Smokes. I know you're usually there too. I think
Yeah,
next year I haven't thought too much about it yet, but I may throw like another official birthday bash. I don't know. Abe was impressed that I got people out on a Wednesday. It wasn't like wall to wall, like if everyone was in town, but it was pretty much all seats filled up at the West Palm store, and I brought them out. So we'll see
yeah,
what
that's good.
happens. See if I can
Yeah.
secure a better night to where I can have that shit wall to wall.
Well, if they'd stop putting the Great Smoke and Pro Cigar the same week, I kind of could have been there. I
Yeah,
mean, every year those events. This year, yeah, it's every year. Every year, it's a problem. So,
yeah. Well,
and I'm not blaming either person either. I'm just saying you got to
I
figure that.
might see if I can get like an after party because I know different people will do an after party. I know Rocky Patel always does Fridays, and somebody like Alec and Bradley did Thursday. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
so
exactly.
let's see if I can secure like one of the after parties because not
Right,
everyone likes to
right.
go to the strip club and waste money
Yeah.
on and all that. So, but anyway, so I appreciate you for coming on, bro. Anybody
Thank you, man.
that may not follow you, tell everybody where they can follow you on social media and all that good stuff.
Easiest thing is Cigar-Coop's Facebook page, cigar_coop for Instagram and Twitter. I am getting better at Instagram. And then, of course, everything can be reached from the Cigar-Coop website, cigar-coop.com. That will get you to all of our news, reviews, and podcasts on all the platforms. So there's a menu up there. You can easily follow through it and check us out there. So you can subscribe to us on Apple, iTunes, we're on Google Play, YouTube, Odyssey, all those things as well.
Sweet. Well,
Yep.
everyone that's tuned in tonight, thank you guys for tuning in. If it's your first time on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. Make sure you share this show out. And Coop, I'll let you know when we're not live so we can talk that real shit.